I'm not one to make broad, sweeping statements. One of the single most impressive pieces of animation I've ever seen, the single most influential anime of all time, which will go down in history as one of the greatest show that will never, ever, 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 ever end. But Xenoblade Chronicles is the single greatest RPG of the last generation. Please note the lack of a J in front of that acronym because it's important. The world of the Bionis is more enticing than Skyrim, Thetis, or even my beloved New Vegas, filled with sights beyond the most vivid imagination. Couple that with a refreshingly original combat system and you have a game in which you can lose yourself for weeks on end. Xenoblade is an easy choice for a gold medal rating, and this year's port to the new 3DS is as good an excuse as any to talk it up, so today we'll be delving deep into the game's mechanics and story to see what exactly makes it work so well. To that end, we'll compare the two versions to see which offers the best experience. You already know from my score that you should definitely play this game, so if you're concerned about spoilers, go do that. Although if you've already started playing the game and never actually finished it, let's be honest here, that's most of you, then watching this might inspire you to polish it off, which is worth it. If you do go play it first, please come back, because I guarantee that by the end of this video, you'll either love Xenoblade as much as I do, or hate it just to spite me. Xenoblade is about gods and creation myths, so we start, appropriately, in the beginning, when the world was nothing but an endless ocean. All of a sudden, two titans the size of continents appear, locked in single combat, and after a battle that lasts millennia, they destroy each other. Over the course of eons, life springs forth from their immense corpses. On the Bionis, a diverse ecosystem grows, dominated by the Homs, because human doesn't sound special enough, the Hyentia, and the mascots, the Nopon. From the metal titan Mechanis, a race of sentient machines called Mechon arises, seemingly hell-bent on eradicating all organic life. The conflict between the worlds is long and bloody, but the tide turns when a Hom hero named Dunban steps forth wielding the Monado, a legendary blade of light said to have been used by the Bionis itself to slay Mechanis. The game opens on the last battle of Sword Valley, a place as metal as it sounds, where Dunban and his compatriots Dixon and Mumkar fend off the last of the Mechon forces. Mumkar is slain in battle, but victory goes to the Homs, and a year on, the Bionis seems free of Mechon threats. Of course, this is an RPG, so that won't last long. As soon as we meet our bright-eyed protagonist Shulk and see the idyllic colony he calls home, we know he's in for a rough time. Then, in case it wasn't clear, he and his love interest go to a scenic makeout spot where she says,
"It's so peaceful. You know, Shulk, I hope every day can be like this, always."
Have these people never played a video game before? Shulk hasn't taken 2 steps out of Colony 9 when it comes under attack by a Mechon army. He, Fiora, and his brutish best friend Rhine rush to protect their home, and in the process, Shulk discovers that he can wield the Monado. He can even do things Dunban never could with it, like see glimpses of possible futures before they happen. Unfortunately, none of that lets him save Fiora from the death flag she carelessly tripped the previous day, and she's skewered by the claws of a Mechon named Metalface. In fact, because of his future sight, Shulk has to watch it happen twice. That only strengthens his resolve, though, and he sets out in search of a way to defeat the faced Mechon, which are immune to the Monado's power, and take revenge for Fiora. The way Xenoblade sets up Fiora's death, it comes as a genuine surprise. She's a full-fledged party member with her own skills and even specialized weapons that only she can wield, some of which you can buy in the game's first shop. She's more or less a clone of Shulk, but Monolith put a lot of effort into designing a character who was meant to die in the first few hours. Of course, if you think about it too much, you realize that they probably wouldn't do that, and then you end up guessing one of the game's big twists, namely that she's still alive and has been turned into a faced Mechon who later rejoins your party. Fortunately, most players won't second guess the designers like that on their first playthrough, so it works very effectively on a subconscious level. Shulk watching his friends die becomes something of a recurring theme throughout the game, though he gets better at preventing it pretty quickly and not just in cutscenes. In battle, Shulk will frequently have visions of enemies using their most powerful attacks, and the game will give you a few seconds to deploy countermeasures or warn whichever teammate is being targeted. This precognition mechanic mechanic is effectively the core of Xenoblade's design, and just about everything else in the combat system is built to support it. Because they were so fixed on implementing predictions, the team at Monolith abandoned many JRPG conventions like turn-based combat and eventually settled on something pretty damn special. At first glance, Xenoblade's combat mechanics are a little strange, and they only get weirder the deeper you look under the hood. Most JRPGs fall into two broad categories: slow burn turn-based games like Bravely Default and mashy action RPGs like the Tales of games. But Xenoblade Chronicles is neither. Instead, Monolith Soft has opted for a real-time hotbar-driven system with auto-attacks like you'd expect to see in a Western MMO. Actually, there's a lot in the game that you'd expect to see in an MMO, such as enemy AI behaviors dictated by aggro stats and parties based on a holy trinity of tank, DPS, and support characters. In an online game, these mechanics encourage cooperation, but this is a strictly single-player affair, and here they're married with JRPG conventions to create strategy-rich gameplay unlike anything else you've ever experienced. On top of their auto-attacks, your characters have battle arts, special abilities with unique effects set to cooldown timers. Arts are like abilities in an MMO, and the bulk of Xenoblade's strategy revolves around combining their effects. This is best demonstrated by the break system. Certain attacks, denoted by pink icons in the hotbar, inflict break status on enemies, which opens them up to increase damage and makes it possible to topple them using green attacks. Toppled characters are even more vulnerable, and mech-on bosses are only susceptible to regular damage after being knocked down. Characters with the ability to inflict break are typically unable to inflict topple as well, so you need to coordinate with other party members to keep powerful enemies down. You're only given direct control of one party member at a time, so occasionally your teammates will fail to follow up on a break with a topple, but they're generally pretty reliable about it. If you want to be sure, you can utilize the future warning system to order them to use a specific ability, or you can initiate a chain attack, which allows you to issue specific instructions to each party member in sequence and deliver devastating combos. Smart use of these mechanics can let you deal out thousands of points of damage in an instant, or even lock strong enemies in an endless loop of topples that leaves them unable to fight back, and I'm just scratching the surface here. When you really dive into what individual characters can do, the strategic possibilities become nearly endless. Managing just one character in an online RPG can feel like a full-time job. In parts of China it is one, and Xenoblade asks you to coordinate stats for 7 of them by the time you reach the endgame, but these leveling and customization systems are streamlined to be fun and simple to use. Characters grow by accruing EXP as you defeat monsters, complete quests, and discover locations around the world. As is standard for JRPGs, you can't directly tweak the stats of your party. Instead, they gain a set amount of HP, strength, agility, and other stats every time they level up. However, on top of experience, each victory and discovery earns you skill and art points, which can be used to help shape each character to your liking. Every character has 16 battle arts and 1 fixed talent art that can only be used by filling up a talent gauge, and you can pour art points into any one of these to improve their efficacy, generally prolonging debuffs, increasing damage, and shortening cooldowns. Initially, each art can only be raised by 4 levels, but you can buy manuals in shops that allow you to take specific arts to level 10. You can only have 8 active arts for each character at any given time, so it's important to prioritize the ones that best suit whichever party build you most prefer. Each character has arts that lend themselves to 2 of the 3 Holy Trinity roles, and you have to choose whether you want to use them for tanking, DPS, or support depending on who else is in the party. Shulk is the exception to this rule, since his talent art activates 8 additional Monado arts, effectively allowing him to act as both DPS and support simultaneously. In addition to arts, each character has a set of skill trees that imbue them with helpful passive traits. You can choose to prioritize 1 skill tree at a time out of a possible 5, which both grants a substantial immediate bonus to one stat, generally between 50 and 100 points, and causes all skill points earned to be funneled into the next skill on that tree. The skill tree system is a clever combination of the best parts of Western and Eastern design philosophy, both in terms of fun gameplay and mechanical metaphor. In a good JRPG, the linear character progression serves a purpose. Character stats and abilities directly reflect their personalities, which lets you empathize with them in both cutscenes and gameplay. In my opinion, it's that conceit that allows JRPGs to tell such strong character-driven stories compared to their Western cousins. Xenoblade cleverly ties each skill tree to one of your character's predominant personality traits, like Shulk's sense of integrity or Rein's indomitable enthusiasm, which turns what might otherwise be a dry but vital strategic element into an exercise in introspection. Your characters are literally deciding deciding what parts of themselves they want to work on in order to grow, which changes the course of their development. That's not even the coolest part about the skill system, though. Your available skills aren't just limited to a single character. If two party members have a strong affinity for one another, you can spend affinity coins to let them share certain skills. What skills can be shared is limited by the shape of the various skill icons, but there are a wide variety of possible combinations for each skill tree. I've always been fond of the notion that who we are is in large part a composite of who we know, and it's really cool to see that idea reflected in Xenoblade's mechanics, but sharing skills is just the first of many benefits that come from building strong bonds between your party members. Over the course of their adventure, Shulk and Rein team up with 5 other heroes. There's Sharla, a kind-hearted but strong-willed sharpshooter and medic, Dunban, the hero of the last war and Shulk's mentor, Riki, the reluctant hero pawn of the no-pawn tribe who's mainly in the hero business as a way to pay off his exorbitant debts, Melia, a brash high-entia princess with an affinity for magic, or ether arts if you want to be cute. And then there's Fiora, whose loving and honest nature is tested but never broken by her murder and conversion into a cyborg. Xenoblade's Affinity System tracks the friendships between these various characters, which grow naturally as they fight alongside one another and participate in quests together. Characters with high affinities can perform extended chain attacks and are better able to craft stat-boosting ether gems from ether crystals dropped by enemies. Gems carry a variety of benefits, from boosting your health and running speed to adding poison damage to your weapons. Slotting the right gems into your weapons and equipment is a vital part of late-game strategy, since good gem choice can compensate for a deficit in levels, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Crafting gems requires pairing 2 characters together at a furnace, each of whom have different strengths and weaknesses in terms of what gems they can make. The exact degree to which they'll boost any component crystal is random, but generally you get higher values out of pairs with higher affinity. If you're smart, you can even craft gems above the level of your current crystal supply, which turns out to be vital in the endgame. Crystals max out at level 5, but efficient crafting can give you a set of immensely powerful level 6 gems, and kitting out your character in a full set of these makes you feel like a badass. The Affinity System would be little more than a diversion were it not for Xenoblade's remarkably strong character writing. Every member of Shulk's party follows their own arc over the course of the game, growing together as their vibrant, energetic personalities bounce off each other. Though they seem to fit into archetypes at first, they quickly break out of them, and their chemistry is electric. Rein's bravado plays well with Melia's demure attitude and Dunban's po-faced seriousness. Shulk's earnest demeanor and knack for invention helps him stand out from the crowd of sulky, moody JRPG protagonists, and he has a certain charisma about him that makes it easy to see why the rest of the party follows his lead. Riki plays the role of comic relief and can seem a little annoying, but he's also a father, and when the group needs it most, he brings a lot of wisdom and kindness to the table. You come to feel for each of these characters over the course of the game, celebrate their triumphs, and mourn their losses. These characters don't just prove their likability in cutscenes either. Every possible party configuration has its own distinct battle dialogue, including some spectacularly funny exchanges that are triggered randomly when you win. This is my favorite.
You can't have a rainbow without Ryan, baby.
Dunban, I think you need to have a talk with Ryan.
No, let's pretend it didn't happen.
If you want to delve deeper into their relationships, every pairing of characters has 3 unique heart-to-heart conversations that can either be deeply touching or hilariously awkward, depending on your choices. This game has personality to spare, and it doesn't stop with the main party. Xenoblade's world is full of hundreds of unique NPCs with their own names and relationships and day-to-day schedules. Every connection between NPCs is mapped on the affinity chart around your party members, and actions you take in quests can drastically change how many characters feel about each other. Improving affinities within a town will improve the settlement's overall affinity towards the player, which makes new items available for trade and opens up new quest lines. As Shulk and his party go on their adventures, characters back home will go through their own mini-dramas. None of these are nearly as in-depth as some of the NPC side stories in Trails in the Sky, but it's better than you see in most JRPGs, and some of them can even be persuaded to move to a new city after a certain point in the story. These NPCs hand out more than 400 quests over the course of the game. A lot of them are simple kill or search or fetch quests, but there are quite a few complex ones that play with mechanics like affinity, and some even involve moral choices. I guarantee you'll remember at least a few faces from each town you visit, which is pretty impressive given just how much world there is to see. I am sorry to say that my channel is still suffering from a copyright strike, and this video is long, so in order to see part 2, you're gonna need to click somewhere on the screen, or down in the description, or in the right recommended videos bar, assuming that YouTube wants to cooperate like that. Hopefully they do. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave this up for a few seconds in order for you to be able to do that. Nailed it.